When night falls and the city lights are shown bright, with the country entirely asleep, then the work of the journalist begins. Our imagination goes wild, dreaming, thinking, and searching for that unique story idea. Visualizing and translating these ideas into action brings the story to life. And, like the fizz in our wine glasses, the story bubbles, finding space as headlines on front pages in the print, broadcast electronically, and posted on new media across the globe. And when it catches the attention of the powers that be, they act speedily. Join my able panelists and I as we speak to weightier issues from all quarters of the professional ladder, share our journalistic experiences, and offer insight beyond what is reported, all on one magazine platform, the Reporters Roundtable. Every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on GBC24. Watch a repeat on GBC24 on Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. and on Tuesdays on Ghana Television from 3 to 5 p.m. The Reporters Roundtable. All angles, all sides. Presenters Fabric for the Reporters Roundtable is sponsored by ATL. ATL, bringing fabrics to life. More information is online at www.akosombo.textiles.com. Hello everyone, you're welcome to the roundtable discussion with me, Rebecca Ewa, and we get to talk today about the appointment of Madam Sophia AKUFFO, famously known for her ruling in the Montie 3 as the new Chief Justice, the second female after Justice Georgina Theodora Wood, who was appointed in 2007 and served for a decade. What new does she bring to the table, and what are your expectations of her? And with me to do the discussion is the excellent, I call her, Eva Okyere. Yes, E for Eva, excellent, you're right. The soft-spoken yet knowledgeable sports journalist who's added a new profession. Private legal practitioner with Ghartey Ghartey. And with her is the Harvard-trained human rights law lecturer at the Gimpa Law School. He is in the person of Justice Srem. And I don't know when he is given an appointment as a Supreme Court judge what he will be called. He's already called Justice, so it will be Justice Srem. Also with me is Abigail. Hunu. Abigail is a human rights activist. She is a women's advocate with a legal background, and she is with the Women in Law and Development in Africa, Wildaf Ghana. She is actually a trained journalist, but she tells me behind closed doors that is. And for those of us wanting to be great leaders and pursue further studies, guess who I will be bringing on the chat? When we are done with talking about the appointment of the CJ, you don't want to miss, just stay glued to your sets. Right, a warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Justice, so when you appointed a Supreme Court judge, should we refer to you? Justice?
Well, if Ghana finds me worthy of that position, I would insist that they call me Justice for my surname.
And Abigail, it's been a long time.
Really long time. You're looking great.
Thank you. You are too. Eva.
That was most flattering, that introduction. Well, it's good to be back.
Great. Right, so let's talk about our subject for discussion. But before then, we simply cannot talk about the appointment of the CJ without touting the achievements of the immediate past one. That is Madam Theodora Wood. Justice, would you want to start with us?
Yeah, definitely. We can't talk about the incoming without having something to say about the outgoing. Particularly the good things that the current CJ has done. I would sum up her administration in probably just one point. I think she is the person who has democratized justice in Ghana. And I have a couple of reasons for saying this. When you think of the number of courts we have now we have about 120 or more high courts in Ghana. It wasn't so before her time. We have Court of Appeal, which is now present in Kumasi and Accra, and they sit in assizes in Cape Coast and in Tamale. So we have 5 capital, towns of our regions having not to travel to Accra to have their cases heard by the Court of Appeal. And that is a plus, which means that justice has been brought closer to the people. Now, in respect of district magistrate courts and all, you could see the number of courts that we have in the recent, past years. You could see the number of courts that have been rolled out. Now, apart from the judiciary itself, let's talk of Justice for All program. Justice has actually been moved from the courtrooms to the prisons, where persons who have no representation, whose cases have been pushed off the record and are languishing in remand prisons unfairly, now are able to have their case heard in the prisons and discharged. And you could see the numbers, which goes a long way to actually reduce to solve a problem that we have in the prisons, congestion. So now we have decongestion of the prison, and we are having fewer people in the prisons. Now, apart from that, we can have another aspect, legal education. You can't run an effective justice system with a very bad or poor legal education, because those who run the system are the lawyers. So now if you come to legal education, for instance, you from 2009 thereabout to now we have over 10, almost 15 law faculties in Ghana. It used to be one, Legon, which was producing on the average less than 100 lawyers who also go ahead to the law school. So Ghana was producing less than 100 lawyers every year. Now the faculties churn out not less than 2,000 LLB holders. Out of the 2,000, it used to be 200. Now I understand it has been increased to about 500 intakes. So which means that from next year going, we are going to have 500 lawyers coming out every year, which is a plus. In addition, the law school has been restructured in a way. So we have law schools not just in Makola, but we have law schools in Kumasi. We have a law school in Gimpa, which means that it has also been brought closer to the people. Now, above all this, Chief Justice Georgina Wood has brought herself and the whole judicial system to the people. So I remember when we were in the faculty and she was appointed, one of the criticisms that some of the senior lawyers were making against her was that she was too visible, and as a Chief Justice or a Justice of the Supreme Court, you ought to be, in some mystery. People don't have to see you. And here is the first Chief Justice who was attending a social event. I remember she was the chairperson for my former boss's wedding, and it was an issue on campus why a Chief Justice would come and cut a cake, So. But
why? Because you have been taught in law school that for such people you need not see them, or what?
I think that has been.
Or it will influence their ruling if people get closer to them.
Yes, that has been the reasoning. Of all this one. But I think that inclination itself is flawed, more or less, because you see, justice emanates from the people. It is our justice, and the judiciary, headed by the Chief Justice, is administering that on our behalf. Why then do we create a very tall wall, thick one as that, and between the people and the justice system? So you can't run a democracy, a proper democracy, on a system where the judges and the justice system is shrouded in some kind of mystery and secrecy, and then they give a decision and we are wondering what is happening. They need to be part of the people, and the people need to be part of the system to have that sense of fairness and equity. So I think in terms of Justice Georgina Wood, it has been a democratization of the judicial system, the justice system, and bringing justice to the people.
Closer to the
which
people.
Will be her flagship in this period.
I don't know what Abigail would want to add.
I would want to add that when in her tenure, she's still the Chief Justice anyway, the outgoing Chief Justice, she has been able to open specialized courts. You know, we have the Human Rights Court, we have the Fast Track Courts, court for DV, domestic violence, and then at least we have about 3 of them operational now. They used to sit twice a week, but now 6 times in a week, including Saturday. So that was really amazing.
Eva?
Well, a lot has been said. I mean, but you cannot speak about her achievements without mentioning the most visible of all being the new court complex, which has given a new form of nobility and comfort to the practice of the law. I keep saying that lately, you don't complain much when you have to wait a while for your case to be called. Plus, you have the benefit of sitting in and listening in and picking some feelers from other cases that are being heard, because it's comfortable within the courts now, and that's about a 40 court structure that you have there. It's an edifice which speaks volumes about what she achieved or has achieved administratively. She's also instilled discipline in the judiciary. I mean, that is a disciplinarian right there. You can ask the lawyers and you attest to the fact that Justice spoke about how visible she is and how she socializes a lot, but she still maintains that decorum and that distance that you require of a person of her stature within the judiciary. And there are other things. I think also prominent amongst her achievements will be the fact that if you look at the bench now, you see a lot of women occupying enviable positions on the bench, and I think that she's done her own a lot of good by promoting women who have exhibited brilliance and excellence in that field over the years. Now from the magistrate level through to the Court of Appeal, and even the Supreme Court, I mean, you see a lot of female justices who are dispensing justice fairly, reasonably, and also with distinction. And I think that that is to her credit as a good administrator.
Right, good. But okay, so we will go to a substantive, that is the current appointment. But before we do that, we did a little profiling of Madam Sophia AKUFFO, and I would want us to watch that. Or if you're not watching and you're doing something to, you listen to whatever will be played. So let's take a video of Madam Sophia AKUFFO. Okay, I hear that one will come later, well, but
before you do that, there's also something that needs to be said about Justice Georgina Wood's tenure and what she's achieved. She runs this program, the mentoring program. It's become a yearly event. She's run that for as long as she's been there, which brings together students and KIA, you know, and gives them an insight into the workings of the judiciary and the court system. So they pick students from the different regions and they come over to Accra. I think her last would be occurring sometime next week, where they pick schools from around the second cycle institutions from around the country. They come in, they have the opportunity to observe court proceedings, interact with judges, and they get judges to speak to them and to encourage them to join the profession and to nurture whatever professional ambitions that they have. I think that is something that that cannot be it's invaluable, to put it aptly, because these are young people aspiring to greater heights, and the leadership that she provides in that regard is priceless.
All right, just this. Were you looking forward to seeing somebody else occupy that seat, the CJ seat?
As a matter of fact, I was looking forward to any of the justices of the Supreme Court occupying that seat, because I think all of them are qualified, not just eligible, but they have what it takes to run the justice system. So I was open-minded about who was going to come. And when the debate, the issue about, it was turned into a two-horse race between Justice Doche and then Justice Eni Yeboah. And I was wondering, but one thing I also realized during the discussion was that in this country, which is a problem, I think, we have a few people who put out something and it's made to look like the whole country is divided along certain lines. I have spoken with so many lawyers even at the time, and no one, I mean, just a few of them thought that it was a two-horse race. Most lawyers were relaxed and were expecting any of the justices of the Supreme Court to come up. So I wasn't surprised, and I wasn't going to be surprised if it had been any other person, because I thought that it was a chance for all of them to show their. And secondly, you see, there's one problem which I also think people are putting out there, but I think it's natural because they see the Chief Justice position as a reward. And if it's a reward or a promotion, more or less, it may be a promotion, but as a matter of fact, it should be seen rather as a challenge, And the Chief Justice doesn't work alone. You are the head, but you are just the first among equals. So in terms of judicial work, you obviously are not heavier than the other justices. In terms of administration, what you do is to delegate your duties to the other justices of the Supreme Court. So if you observe, you notice that some functions and you see other justices coming to perform the role that the Chief Justice probably is supposed. So they work as a team. And if you speak with them, if you have the opportunity to speak with them, they don't see this distinction of the Chief Justice and this is no, they work together most of the time administratively. When it comes to decision making, of course, they are supposed to have an independent mind, and no one should interpret that to mean they have formed some form of some kind of alliance. So I think the discussion that led to the appointment was just unfortunate. I saw it as very, very poorly handled. But then this is democracy, so we should be able to contain some of these things.
Okay, so I'll come back to Abigail and Eva to get their thoughts on what they make of the appointment. But before that, let's take the video and let's watch the profile, little profile we put together for Madam Sophia AKUFFO.
Justice Sophia AKUFFO, when approved by Parliament, will be the 13th person and the second woman to have attained the highest judicial office. She has been working as Justice of the Supreme Court since 1995 and has a master's degree in law from the Harvard University in the United States. She has been a member of the governing committee of the Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute and chairperson of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Task Force. In January 2006, Justice Sophia AKUFFO was one of the first judges elected at the African Court on Human and People's Rights and was re-elected until 2014 when she served as the vice president. She is the immediate past president of the court. Madam AKUFFO is on the disciplinary committee of the General Legal Council and has held executive positions of many organizations. She is an author at the judiciary, and her recent publications include The Application of Information and Communication Technology in the Judicial Process, the Ghanaian Experience, presented to the African Judicial Network, Ghana, in 2002. The President, Nana Akufo-Addo, commended the outgoing Chief Justice, Justice Mrs. Georgina Theodora Wood, for her immense contribution to the nation's judicial system during her tenure.
Her career has been extraordinary, and I pay warm tribute to her distinguished service to our nation and wish her a well-earned retirement, even though her public service will not be over, as her place on the Council of State awaits her.
The President said he would be a genuine and trusted partner of the judiciary and would not interfere in its work.
I have no doubt that Justice Sophia AKUFFO will be a worthy successor to Chief Justice Wood and uphold jealously the independence of the judiciary. I expect discipline, fairness, integrity, and the continuing modernization of judicial activities to be the hallmarks of her tenure as Chief Justice, if she is so endorsed by the constitutional bodies. It is important for the development of our nation that we have a judiciary that commands the respect of the nation by the quality of its justice delivery, as well as by the comportment of its justice. We are all witnesses to the stormy winds that have buffeted the judiciary in recent years, and to the efforts Chief Justice Wood has been making to restore public confidence in the institution. I expect Justice AKUFFO to continue and intensify that work.
Justice Sophia AKUFFO's appointment, when confirmed, will indicate Ghana's position as a strong believer of affirmative action, which paves way for women inclusiveness in all aspects of governance. Justice Sophia AKUFFO takes over from Justice Georgina Theodora Wood, the longest-serving Chief Justice.
Right, I think we had to cut it right there. Abby, yes. Affirmative action, yes. What you make of that?
I'm really
that
sure,
appointment.
Yes. If the affirmative action bill is passed into law, I'm sure I'm going to throw a party, like, you know, for myself and everyone that cares to take part, you know. I really don't know how people perceive affirmative action. Like, you know, it's just a temporary measure to ensure that we have equality of women, or equity, the number of men and women that we have in our public and our private, and then political spaces are almost the same. In this case, we are not even asking for 50-50. You know, we are not asking for 50-50 like countries like Rwanda and Senegal and all that. All we are asking is 40%. And there has been years of an equal footing for both men and women to participate in political spaces. So affirmative action, like I earlier said, is just a temporary measure. So as soon as we have at least the 40% of women and people with disability in both public and political spaces, then yes, we could relent on that. And I should say that I am so happy that the President of Ghana has actually nominated another woman to take over from the outgoing Chief Justice. This has been amazing. And we have confidence in the incoming Chief Justice that she's going to do an amazing work, taking into consideration her background and her experiences.
Well, you know, Rebecca, most times when the issue of affirmative action comes up, it's as if you're just asking for women to be put in positions by virtue of the fact that they are simply women. Thankfully, these two are examples of women of substance. I mean, Justice Georgina Wood has left no one in doubt that a woman is capable of occupying this topmost position and executing her task to perfection. Justice Sophia AKUFFO, from everything that she's done throughout her career, has shown that, I mean, she's a worthy choice for this position. And I have no doubt in my mind that she would continue from where Justice Georgina Wood would leave off brilliantly and justify why she was chosen for this position. So I'm happy that we are not simply talking about women who are simply women occupying the position, but we're talking about women who have shown through their scholarly works, who have shown through their administrative acumen that given the opportunity, they would prove equal to what any man can do. And Justice Georgina Wood is a perfect example. Justice Sophia AKUFFO, I have no doubt that she
you know what, usually when women are appointed, especially to these positions, people tend to, would I put it, they put a tag on the, for instance, let me give you a clear example. When the AKUFFO administration brought in Justice Theodora Wood, there was this argument that it was, will I call it a reward for her ruling in the MV Benjamin cocaine saga. and that she has been appointed so she can do the bidding of that government at the time. Over the time, that has proven wrong. This one, people are putting up the argument that, look, it is a reward for her ruling in the Montie 3. Why should we always bring in something when women are given these kind of positions?
You know, I mean, where was Montie 3 when Justice AKUFFO was the
upgrading
vice president of the African Court of Human and People's Rights?
Exactly.
I mean, where was Montie 3? Where was Montie 3 when she was the chairperson of the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority? You know, so, and as much as we live in a democracy and some of these views are allowed, I mean, we don't need to place so much weight on them, apart from saying that they're also part of the discussions that we may be having.
I think it's basically because, I mean, we can't also, it's a fact that it's a political appointment. You see, so once it is a political appointment, people are at liberty to read politics into it, but we must always be careful not to water down the argument too much. Because, I mean, I think that the primary guideline, or I mean, the major benchmark in selecting a Chief Justice would be her jurisprudence, for instance, her legal ideologies, you know, and you can judge that from her decisions over time throughout her career. And that for me would be the key benchmark here. So if you reduce the argument to her political ideology or inclination, I think that you're doing an injustice to the person and what she's capable
and
of.
You see, there are so many factors that we consider in filling such positions. So it's about the weight you put on all the factors.
Okay, so tell us about some of the factors
So we'll look
aside
at
what Eva has spoken about.
Okay, so we are looking at, first of all, you should be eligible, and once you're in the Supreme Court, then you are eligible to become a Chief Justice. It doesn't mean that you only need to be the Supreme Court. You may be outside and still be eligible. So she has made the constitutional requirement. But so you would want to see the person's ideology. If you are so minded, you want to consider issues of gender. If you are so minded, you may want to consider national, what we call it, regional balance, tribal issues. All these are indicators or things that you probably will consider. But what matters is what weight do you put on each and every one of these issues. Clearly, she is someone who has shown more than enough that she is competent for this job, whether or not she is a woman, whether or not she comes from the president's hometown, whether or not she
has a similar name,
or whether or not she sat and decided the Montie 3 case. I mean, clearly she has shown beyond, I mean, over the years that she has what it takes to sit there. So, and which that is what matters. Anyone you bring will come from somewhere, and will not come from another place, you know. And those whose area she doesn't come from will raise issues. So, how much weight do you put on that? If you bring a man, some people will be happy, others will not be happy. If you bring a woman, others will be happy, others will not be happy. If you bring someone who bears the name AKUFFO, someone will be happy. So let's see how these things, I mean, let's measure the weight we put on these factors. I won't fight anyone who thinks that, who raises, I mean, some of these issues, because they are also legitimate concerns that are being raised, but I don't see them as heavy issues that we should consider so much when it comes to this particular office.
Abi, how do you, what do you want to see the new Chief Justice if she's sworn in? What do you want to see differently in restoring the image of the judiciary with that perceived corruption tag on them in the judiciary?
Okay, before I tackle that question, it just saddens my heart so much that we live in a country where when women are appointed to very high positions and all sorts of questions and eyebrows are raised as if women will have brains. You know, it's just amazing. It just amazes me. You know, women are more than capable, just like their male counterparts. And I don't want the situation whereby we are even using men as a yardstick. Like, you know, you have to measure up to a man. You have to like do like ×4 of what a man is doing for you to be recognized as having the experience, having the wisdom, having the paper qualifications to occupy positions. What I would want to see the new CJ, the incoming CJ do is, I think, as it stands right now, because of Anasi's expose, the judiciary, you know, there's this name tag already. So I don't know whether if we install CCTV cameras in every courtroom, you know, that could help. And because one, you can't prevent people going into the judges' chambers. Like, or for the mere fact that somebody has gone into the judges' chambers does not mean that the person is going there to go and do, you know, something illegal or trying to influence the judges' ruling or judgment for that matter, or preventing people from going to their homes and all that. Maybe the CCTV cameras could do one, and then having another maybe workshop, I don't know how often that should be, and having a discussion with the judges and all the judicial players, like, you know, that this is the situation we find ourselves in. How do we as individuals and a collective body try as much as possible to improve upon their image, and as and when situations of maybe corruptions, you know, seems to, you know, creep itself into judgments and stuff like that. If you have evidence, there should be a committee, you know, that sits to analyze the evidence and all that, and if the person or the judge is guilty, then the appropriate punishment is meted out.
Mr. Srem, is this issue of corruption with the judiciary perceived one, or it's a reality?
Oh. I mean,
I don't put it in a tight corner.
No, not in a tight corner at all. I think the issue has gone beyond perception to reality, and we'll be deceiving ourselves to keep we'll be denying the truth when we say it's mere perception. At least we have had opportunity where someone has brought us some you know, hard evidence. In as much as not all those people who were shown in those videos will be necessarily guilty of, but it shows that certain things that some judges do are not supposed to be done by a judge, and that is enough evidence that it is real. And in respect of how the issue has been handled, I think you see, sometimes we are charged as a public. We are so much excited, not excited in the positive sense, but we are angered by some of these things, and we want certain things to follow immediately, and we are ready to do them in a mob action way, even without, you know, without following due procedure. But you see, as a Chief Justice or as a judge, you need to be very mindful of how you do the things. It's not just about what you do, but how you do them. And Chief Justice Georgina Wood, as far as I'm concerned, has followed the procedures. You may have issues, of course, lawyers will always have some issues with the process and everything, but substantially, a lot of procedure has been followed, and we have seen some of the judges duly, you know, sanctioned, and others are still challenging their sanctions, others are still struggling, but it is part of the process. And as a people, look, we can't also sit down and pretend that corruption is just the judges, in as much as we can say the judges are the leaders in the judicial corruption area. But we have all these judicial service staff who are heavily in the act. Some of them, the judges are not even aware. And we have the citizens themselves. Look, sometimes you'll be shocked as a lawyer where your client comes to you and says, well, so when you charge your fees, he's asking, so how much would the judge take?
Oh.
Yeah, and
they're willing.
They're willing. And some actually go behind your back because they believe that, well, for you, it's just a procedural requirement that you go there and talk. But the real deal is how much you give to the judge to get your decision. So when you charge them, they are willing to pay, but they also make enough money to go and sort those things out. And sometimes they come and tell you after the case that this is what they have done, but of course you don't have any evidence. But you know, so we the people too must be aware that sometimes, you see, when you have authority in this country, you may be the most righteous person, but for how long? Just imagine, maybe you are recruited as a police officer, you are on the road, right? and you decide that you will never take money from anyone on the road. Week 1, you do all you can do and send all the people to the district magistrate to prosecute. Week 2, people are always breaking the law. People are begging you, people are giving all manner of reasons why you shouldn't. And then what will even kill you is that when the people you have, sent there, you find them working about the next day, which means that someone along the chain has sorted, has taken. So it won't be long for you to realize that you are just wasting your time, and then you have to join the bandwagon. So it is systemic. It is all of us contributing to this. So if we sit down and cross our legs and we are pointing fingers that the judges are corrupt, the lawyers are corrupt, we are not solving any problem. We are just deceiving ourselves that we are angry, but we are not really angry. So all of us should be involved in the process.
Exactly. I mean, she can only do so much. I'm talking about the CJ nominee. Now, she can only do so much, if she doesn't have the support of the people that she's supposed to be working with, she would achieve next to nothing. So I think that what she would have to bring to the fore would be her ability to lead, her leadership ability, how she's able to rally her staff, the judicial staff around her, would go a long way to determine her success as a Chief Justice. She must have some sort of relationship with the people that she's working with. There must be that level of respect for her, but she must also be able to deal with them in a mutually respectful manner so that they earn her confidence and her trust. That is very key. You don't want anybody undermining your authority in this position. And trust me, there are people out there, elements within the service who would be out there to undermine her authority. You can't gloss over that. So her people skills must be brought to the fore. And I think that along the line in her career, she's occupied positions which have afforded her that expertise and that ability to manage the people that she's going to be dealing with. That is very key. Otherwise, nothing will work. I'm talking about that because when you decide to look at her scholarly works, I think that in that regard, she would have no difficulty at all. She's churned out brilliant decisions, landmark decisions. So, I mean, I've listened to the discourse following her appointment or nomination, and I mean, for all that was said negatively, nobody dared to question her competence as a judge because of her decisions. Nobody, so that for me would not be a major issue. The issue would be how she fares with the judicial staff, and that is where her administrative skills, her human relationship, how she's able to manage the staff, that would have to come to the fore, because Justice Georgina Wood has set the pace and she needs to live up to it and even do a lot more. And so
higher one, of course.
Exactly. So she has her job well cut out for her, and there's no room for blips at this moment. So, but I think that she's a firm hand from everything. I mean, from her countenance and all. She's a firm hand. I have no doubt that she's a strict disciplinarian. From the positions she's occupied outside the jurisdiction, those are positions that, I mean, can be handled exceptionally well only by a firm hand and a firm and fair-minded person. And so I have no doubt that in that capacity she'll be able to discharge her duties, but she needs to get the trust and confidence of the people that she's going to work with, and she should not be afraid to take prisoners. And I think that is something that she would do with ease. She shouldn't take prisoners, because sometimes, I mean, I don't know, Justice, if you've observed, you have issues raised about the conduct of some judges, some staff. The next thing you know, the person has been transferred and it's in a more obscure corner of the country where no light will be shed on those practices. I don't think that's the best practice. Where you need to check out people, you need to be bold enough to do it. I mean, I think the system will be better off with a few diligent and conscientious hardworking people than many people who are simply corrupting the system and pretending to be working for the nation.
Right. Okay, so I'll come back after this break. You know, Mr. Srem talked about when the public is in expectation of how the wheels of justice should be grinding and all of that, and it's that slow. We would want to find out how effective. I don't know how her role will be in all of this. You said so many things, but I don't know when it comes to justice delivery and all of, and the expectations from the public that look, Anas has brought us something. We are looking forward to seeing, you see that case has been on hold for quite some time now. We're not hearing about it. I don't know. On my part, I'm not hearing about it.
It's going on. Just that
okay, so we'll come back to not to shed light on that. All right, it is a reporters roundtable. We're looking at the appointment of the new CJ. We'll come back, and when we'll come back, we'll talk some more. But bear in mind that you can reach us via text or on our WhatsApp platform on 02444 75422 02444 75422, or you can send us your messages, your comments, your suggestions on how best she can go about her work on our Facebook platform, Reporters Roundtable, or follow us on Twitter at RoundtableGH, and we'll read it right here on set. We'll be back. Stay with us.
And get in touch with some of the best brains in the field of journalism. It's a good program. All the best.
Journalism is dynamic, and as part of our responsibility, we are supposed to go out there, fish for information for the public. Today in Ghana, it is our duty to ensure that the masses know what is going on in society. Reporters Roundtable is a program that you can get all these things. Watch Reporters Roundtable with Rebecca Iwa this and every Thursday.
All right, well, welcome back to the Reporters Roundtable. I would have loved that you were here behind the scenes with the discussions going on when we're on break. But let's talk about justice delivery system. The wheels of justice in Ghana, I don't know for other parts of the world. Here in Ghana, it grinds very slowly, and the public is in expectation of what happens to this person, where has this case gotten to, and all of that. Abigail, I'll bring you in, but because Justice brought up the matter, let me come to him first. Will the CJ's appointment have some sort of effect, or will her role come in when it comes to this speeding up of the delivering of justice?
Yeah, the Chief Justice obviously has a fundamental role in reforming how the justice system grinds, and that is something that we should look at, because it is sometimes embarrassing and annoying the rate at which, I mean, the slow pace at which we move with the justice delivery system. I look forward to a day where we'll be filing processes online, so I don't have to travel all the way from my law firm in East Legon to Accra Central just to file something and go back, just to come and say my lord is on leave. So I sit in traffic for hours, and then I come to court and the judge is in a meeting and cannot sit for the day, and I have to drive back. Something that could easily be sent through an email, text message, or some of these platforms. And the software are there in other jurisdictions where you don't need, we don't need to come. So when you do this online thing, the advantage is that you save costs, not just for the client, but for the judicial system itself. We already don't have money on so many. So why do we come to court every day, sit down, and we are running on electricity and the light bill, and we can't pay, and all the things that the cost. So we should be able to put in place a software system. And you see, why do I have to serve someone So I have to pay my own clerk, who will go and pay the judicial service clerk to go and serve someone, and then they can't find it. The docket is lost, and they are not, so many issues. When I can upload it somewhere, and automatically, real time, the judge has a copy, the other person has a copy, and we don't even use paper, and we are reading and we are replying everything online. What prevents us from doing that? So, and if you do this, all these adjournment issues, all these taking of dates, which actually clogs the justice system, and we don't move, will be off. So, and I think it's something that you don't need 10 years to do. You don't need 10 billion pounds to do it. It's just the political will, and it will be done. So it is one thing that already Chief Justice AKUFFO has barely 2 years to go on retirement. And these are some of the things that some of us are sitting down and expecting to happen, so that we save the Ghanaian the cost of litigation, the cost of going to court. The other issues, my expectation will come later, but I think that now it's about justice delivery system. I have other expectations which I believe would
you'll bring it up later in the discussion. Abi, how effective and efficient can we make our justice delivery system?
First of all, there's a barrier to some groups of people accessing justice. Apart from the monetary aspect, filing fees right now is over the top. Some people can't afford that. And then we have people with disabilities that can't access some of the courts because it's a story building, and there's no way that they could get up there. Beyond that, I think some cases could be referred, more cases actually should be referred to alternative dispute resolution. They could use that, the court system has that. They should do more, unless of course it's a criminal case, which there is nothing you can do about it. It has to go through the normal system, as in the formalized legal system. And then I'm so happy Justice said that the system should be computerized, because there has been several occasions where dockets just grew pairs of legs and just, walked out. Yes, yeah. It does happen.
Very embarrassing.
A lot of the time. So I think that should be one of the topmost things that she needs to do. And then when you go to outside Accra, the high courts, for instance, if they could add the DV, cost to it, so that all cases are domestic violence related could go to one court, as it is done in Accra, Kumasi, and Tema. That could also lower the pressure on the main courts for that matter. So I think this is my take on it for now.
Anything else to add, Eva?
Oh, well, I think they've said about the basics that she would need to attend to immediately, and she would need to do these things through the court administrators who are already in place. They would have to be more up and doing. Justice spoke about communicating adjournments and inability, of course, to sit to lawyers, for instance. Lawyers come all the way. Sometimes you travel all the way to Cape Coast from Accra only to be told that the judge is gone, is attending a seminar. And I'm thinking, this is not something that came up overnight. It's not an afterthought. It's a program that has been on the schedule from the beginning of the legal year. A simple message to the lawyers would have saved everybody the trouble of traveling all the way, the risk involved and all of that. So some of these things. And then if the movements from the old court to this new structure taught us anything, it's about the need to computerize the system, do better archiving of court dockets. For a whole legal year, some cases were dormant, were cold. I had the occasion to keep explaining to clients, some of them foreign clients who could not just grasp the whole idea that their files were lost in transit. Yes, because the files were carted manually to the new courts, and some of them got lost in the maze. With the transition, the courts have had to create fresh dockets, I mean makeshift dockets of most cases, because a lot of them were lost in the maze during the transit. And I mean, I think that's something that we need to immediately attend to, this issue of dockets getting missing, so that cases are held up for months while you try to create new dockets. You know, it gets embarrassing when you have to keep explaining to clients like that. And then, I mean, we need to sanitize the system generally. Sanitize the system. I think that thankfully with the new structure, you have most of the things automated. So now court proceedings are more readily available, because as you do the advocacy, is being typed, and so a day or two later you can put in your application for the proceedings and they'll be made available. But that is restricted to the new structure, which means that more of the courts still don't have that system. So these are things that we would need to be attending to in the immediate if we're looking to modernize the justice delivery system.
And then I would also want to add that sometimes also it's not just the judges sitting on the cases that kind of delay the lawyers for both sides. Sometimes they keep on taking dates and taking dates and taking dates and nothing is happening. I remember there was, I think is it court 1 or court 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just strike out for want of prosecution, go and come back. You know, instead of wasting everyone's time and then coming to court, nothing happens, going back for months on end. So I think that is one of the things that could be done.
Just to add to what my colleague just said, you know, if you observe carefully, you will notice that the reasons the lawyers give for taking dates are reasons that cannot be given if everything is online. Okay. So the lawyer is either complaining that he was caught up in traffic, he's not been served or something. So if you have this online system, I mean, how can a lawyer come and say that he's not been served? Because the material is online, the brief, the process is online, and you have it. So when the online systems come on board, then you would have to find a very good reason why you should take adjournment on certain occasions. And because we always have to be physically present to speak to some of these issues, a simple email system can solve all this. And there are jurisdictions where you only come to court when there is a need for that physical conversation. But most of the processes that go on are processes that are done online. So you won't be having that luxury of giving excuse of why the case should be adjourned. And it will save cost, to save time, and the poor people will be happy because now lawyers will charge less. Because if you're on your way,
would you be happy?
I mean, I don't get anything from traveling to Cape Coast and taking maybe some money from the client and not having to do any work, because there's so much work.
Cater for the risk involved in traveling and all of that.
How much is the client going to pay? You know, so you won't lose anything by that. If you ask me, most lawyers want to sit in the office and do more.
I think we all benefit from the efficient management of the judicial system, and so case management, for instance, is another area that would have to be looked at critically. I know that the outgoing Chief Justice set targets for the judges, so you were supposed to deliver a certain number of judgments or rulings within a period of time. I mean, there were real challenges because sometimes the judges were handicapped in coming up with the judgments that they were supposed to come up with because the system generally failed them. You know, sometimes judges show up in court and the lights are off. There's no standby generator or something. You simply cannot work in that environment. So these are so many things. I mean, I'm happy the president spoke about modernization of justice delivery. I think that is one area that we need to critically look at if we fancy catching up with the rest of the world. These are areas, and these are things that, as Justice said, you don't require too much wealth to attain. I mean, once you prioritize these things and you devote some effort to it, I think there are things that are really achievable within a short space of time.
Okay, but Abigail, you know, What really accounts for this falling standard in legal education and training? The CJ, the Justice Theodora Wood has complained about it, then it means that it is of concern. And if there's the appointment of a new CJ, then she should also take it up. What are the issues? What is happening? Why the falling standards that the CJ Theodora Wood is talking about?
I don't, since she didn't give specifics, you know, she didn't give specifics, it will be hard for me to sit here and pinpoint, you know, 1, 2, 3, that this seems to be the case. I honestly don't know if it has to do with the, you know, purification of universities, like offering, yes, LLBs, you know, some basically in people's sitting rooms and all that. I don't know if that is one of the reasons that might account for the low standards of the training of LLBs, you know, people, you know, trying to become lawyers. I don't know if that is one of the reasons.
Well, I know
it should be, or because there's just one.
I think Justice is best placed being the lecturer himself. But I think that the proliferation of campuses inherently comes with its challenges. I mean, granted, there's the need to produce more lawyers because the legal needs of the society are growing as we evolve as a people. So the numbers that used to be churned out back in the day are not complementary of the needs of the people. But then when you decide to open the floodgates, the issues of monitoring, supervision come up. You know, who is monitoring how these law faculties are functioning or operating? Who is evaluating them? You know, when it used to be just the law faculty of the University of Ghana, Legon, you knew what was happening. You know, it was easy to deal with. Exactly, the faculty was just that faculty, so it was easier to monitor and evaluate the performance of faculty members generally and all of that. Now it's so easy for things to be happening on the blind side of the leadership, and I think that has accounted for some form of a dip in the quality of legal education that we are getting now. I mean, because you're even looking at the you're looking at the teachers, the models, the people who are delivering the education to the students. What are the standards? What quality do they have in their fold? All of these you need to take a critical look at.
Lawyers, I mean, obviously.
Yes, I mean, you're looking at it should be a fine blend of practitioners and academics, you know, because you're training people who will come out and practice. I mean, so you need a fine blend of academics and practitioners. But who is actually monitoring what is happening? That's what I can't speak to, and probably for me that would be a challenge with the proliferation of campuses now.
Once you have an upsurge in the numbers and you don't have a commensurate, you know, increase in monitoring and evaluation, then you are bound to have some of the challenges we are having. But I think the CJ statement raises more questions than answers. So what yardstick are we even measuring these new lawyers against as the old lawyers? Because really the world is changing, so expectations must also change. What you expect the modern lawyer to do should be different from what you expected, what you expect from his father, who was a lawyer, to do. You know, so we are just talking about filing, and those days you want to read a case and you need to physically go to the library. And I remember when we were in the faculty, there were no much online material, so we were reading hard copy, underlining, making photocopies. These days you have your iPad. I think all your materials are here, more than I could actually access in the library. So if you expect that I come to court and I carry 5 books, law reports, okay, open and read to you, for you to see that I'm a good lawyer, you probably will not be having a very, you know, progressive expectation. if I come with my iPad and I'm flipping and you feel offended by that behavior, probably you are not living up with the changes. So I think we should be more clear on what we mean by the standards. Of course, there are situations where the schools, the LLB, not just the LLB, even the law school itself would have its own challenges on training and bringing itself up to. But we are in a revolution. You know, legal education itself is in a revolutionary stage now. So we need to be ready to keep up. Otherwise, it will not be enough to say standards are falling, because we don't even know what standards were there and whether those standards are even relevant or matching up with the requirements of today. So we should be more. And now, you see, legal education used to be what one of my friends would call rule mode. So you have, and I have spoken with top lawyers, very old lawyers, and they tell you that, look, they wish some of the things we are going through today, they had it at their time. They were basically, okay, this is the rule, this is what it says, so they are specific on the rules. They care very less about the policy behind the rules. These days, legal education is about opening up the mind of the lawyer to be able to even change the rules, because the rules so far have not helped us. If they had helped, we wouldn't be here today asking for. So I think the point is that we need to look at the issues more critically. And the question about numbers, so far I've been searching. We don't have any research showing how many lawyers we need in this country. All I hear is that we need lawyers. So, and they will divide the number of Ghanaians, the population, by the number of lawyers and say that, well, maybe it's too low. But the fact that I need legal services doesn't mean that I can afford a lawyer. You see, we need to be clear. Legal practice is business. So every lawyer is dealing with what? You are doing business and you want profit. Exactly. That is why you have all the lawyers here in Accra fighting to get some free cases, and no one wants to go to, let's say, my village. Because, yes, all the people in my village need legal services, but trust me, can they afford a lawyer? The fact that you have so many people asking for lawyer or who may need legal services doesn't mean that then you have to channel all your resources as a country and train all your brilliant people to be lawyers. What about engineers? What about those medical doctors? So we all don't need to be lawyers to be able to solve our problems. Exactly. Lawyers don't produce anything. We don't manufacture tangibles. We actually eat from the other areas.
Yes, spot on. I hear a lot of people wanting to be in law school or to read law for all the wrong reasons. You know, I mean, when you talk about it, they will tell you that you are a lawyer now, so you don't want someone else. But you see, I mean, I keep saying this is something that you'll be doing for the rest of your life. You must have a very good reason for wanting to do it for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you come out and you are seeking to cut corners and you are non-conformist. You are doing so many ridiculous things. You know, you get frustrated and then you take it out on the unsuspecting public. And so I think that, I've had instances where people are jobless, and so after first degree, they are just home, and so they enter law school. That's the only reason they are in law school, because they can't find a job.
Okay, I have some messages in here, but we'll go for a break, and this will be our last break, I guess. We'll also open the phone lines. If you're watching, our number is 0501 552 729 05 729. Expectations of the newly appointed CJ, and any experiences you have, what suggestions do you have, comments, contributions, they are welcome. You can call us on 0501 552 729. We are back.
So in our day-to-day practice of journalism, we get the opportunity to write on a litany of issues ranging from politics, business, health, religion, and what have you. We seek to bring this experience onto one platform, the Reporters Roundtable. My name is Morris Ogbete. Watch the Reporters Roundtable on GBC24 every Thursday.
Right, glued to your set. And there is this statement here. I would love us to hear about it. It's signed by the Information Minister, and the Attorney General's Department is said to be investigating the circumstances under which a principal state attorney in Kumasi decided, without recourse to advice from higher authority, on a matter of high public interest of this nature, that is with regards to the 8 Delta Force members who have been freed and the charges dropped against the persons arrested in connection with disturbances in a Kumasi Magistrates Court in April this year. Preliminary investigation suggests that the decision was taken without recourse to even the Director of Public Prosecution and may account to a breach of internal procedures on matters of this nature. While the department awaits the full results of this investigation, we would like to reiterate our commitment to ensuring that the rule of law is applied at all times and persons found culpable of any breaches that bring the work and commitment of the department into disrepute will be sanctioned and the appropriate remedies adopted in the interest of the public. So this is a signed statement of the discontinuance of prosecution with regards to the 8 Delta Force members, and that has been signed by the Minister of Information. I have this message here that has been directed specifically to Justice Srem Sai, and the question says is coming from Adam Boade, and Adam says, Mr. Sai, can you touch on the effect of lack of the structure, or perhaps what influences judges in their adjudication and interpreting statutes, and how the CJ can help in this direction as a means to modernize and expediting justice delivery in Ghana? And this one is coming from Adam Boade. To you, Justice.
Yes, so if you want to find out what influence judges.
Okay, let me put you on hold on that one. Okay. I hear there's somebody on the line. We'll come back to you too. Hello, we have Mashama. Hello, sir. Good to have you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, my name is Abigail.
Good.
I'm calling from Asoma Estate. Yeah, we want more women in the appointment. More women.
You want more women, right?
Yes.
What are your reasons? What are your reasons?
Because they also have a right. I think we have to give chance to the women also to perform.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And congratulations to the new madam.
All right. Thank you so much for calling to the program. Justice.
Yes. So
your question.
I think the first thing that influences a judge in the discharge of her duty is or ought to be the law. So the law will be the first thing you look at. But behind this looking at the law would be your own personal experiences in life, your beliefs, your personal biases, and all come to play because you are trying to interpret and apply the law. Now, so if certain cases go before someone, so an armed robbery case, if you put that case before a judge whose relative has been convicted of armed robbery and is languishing in jail, the way the judge will look at the case may be slightly different from a judge who has actually been robbed by an armed robber. You know, so personal experiences influence how judges decide on
cases. But we have Adams from Nima too. Personal experiences when it comes to justice delivery. Hello, Adams.
Hi. Good morning to you and your panelists.
Yeah. Good morning, Adams.
Yes, I want to congratulate the new appointee, and I hope that she becomes very neutral and have the courage to dispense justice. However, I want to find out if like what has gone wrong, the scam made by the microfinances. When you go to the offices, you will see Bank of Ghana license being issued by Bank of Ghana, and what they did to us, taking advantage over some of our vulnerable people in the society, and no one was to speak in their favor. Only few of them came into the limelight, and there are numerous of them across the nation with Bank of Ghana issuing licenses to them, and there was not proper supervision and monitoring that has led to these loopholes. So how are they going to justice for those who have been victimized? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adams. That's a good question. Justice, are you done with your
Yes, so if you ask me what influenced judges, I would say these things. And the person also wanted to know what the Chief Justice can do about this. Judges, when they are performing their judicial functions, are supposed to be independent in their thoughts and whatever they go through in coming to a decision. So, in terms of judicial exercise, the Chief Justice could have very little to do with what influences them. However, in terms of the structural arrangements, the Chief Justice, for example, we were just talking about, electronic processing. So it's something that can influence a judge's way of delivering the judgment. Because if I will spend 1 year on a case and I can spend 3 months, the conclusion I come to may even differ because I'm now having all the facts and everything within a short period of time. But if the case drags on, the way I will even decide will be different. So I think in terms of structure-wise, the Chief Justice, like we've already mentioned, can influence. But in terms of what actually the judge will be considering the judicial exercise of his powers would be something that the Chief Justice could do almost little about.
We have some comments here. This one says, Madam, my name is Dixon from Accra. My old man, who is about 75 years, has been a caretaker of this land for in Cape Coast for over 40 years. Now the family has come to this one is free consultation, or what do you call it?
It's a free consultation.
Free consultation. It's even out of our land matters. Okay. I guess we will have to talk back door. I'll respond to this one so that we talk. This one is coming from Bridget in Accra. Bridget says, the deeds of the appointed CJ would be widely determined by looking at the past cases, like the killing of the overlord of Dagbon, the murder of MP JB Dankwaidu, and several rape cases. She must be able to tackle head-on the accessibility of legal aid for the less privileged, so they seek justice to the maximum. Also, she must clean the judicial service. I don't know what you mean by clean. I guess it's corruption. The missing of docket has always become a problem to justice delivery. She tackling past cases would make her stand out amongst her predecessors. This one is from Bridget in Accra. Bridget, the citing of how would that make her stand out if you tackle past cases like what she's made mention of?
There are cases that are lingering. They've lingered for so long. People are looking for a closure to these cases. I think a case in point is the murder of JB Dankwaidu. I think there's been a call for a speedy adjudication of that matter. So I guess that's what this person is referring to. Some of these cases are rather sensitive cases that people are seeking answers to. So if you are able to dispense with these cases in record time, it would be much appreciated. I mean, we've been talking about the speedy delivery of justice, even though we need to be cautious that due process is followed. And sometimes when due process has to be followed, it comes at a cost. I mean, time is sacrificed at a point, because if you have to do it and do it right, sometimes the speed doesn't really matter. But also when it's a situation where you think that it can be done speedily, I think that's what people will be looking out for.
Just as you want
to right? Just add to what Eva just said about expectation. Her ladyship is caught up in a very difficult situation because we have huge expectations of her, and she has barely 2 years to deliver. Then you know that there's a big challenge. If I were asked to give my expectation and advice, I would take into consideration the fact that she has just 2 years, and within these 2 years, there are certain things that you can do which will not require you to. For example, if you want to build the short term, things that you can do. In fact, the things can even have long-term effect, but they could be achieved within the shortest possible time. So I have a couple of, just a few, maybe 3 in mind.
Okay.
First, we have what we call the public interest litigation, which is supposed to help those who don't have money, the indigents, to access justice. And let me give you an example in India. In India has a population of almost 1 billion people. So the likelihood of, if you reduce court processes and fees, we are talking of more people having access to the court, and then justice delivery may suffer because of the people, but because of the number of people coming. But India has something in place called the epistolary jurisdiction of the court, where someone who is witnessing some injustice to other persons could write, or the persons themselves, instead of hiring a lawyer, filing a writ at a cost and going through the motions and all that, all you need to do is to write a letter to a judge, and the judge will convert that letter and then into a writ and shorten all these processes and address the issue, particularly human rights issues. And it's something that is growing in the developing world. It's called epistolary because you write a letter to the judge. And I think it's something that her leadership should look at critically and try to put in place in our country, because every day we see people who don't have money going through a lot of injustices. And this is not because someone is enjoying the injustice, but it's because ignorance. So if we can get the court to step in by merely giving basic orders and the issues resolved. For example, prisoners being abused by prison officers. It was a big issue in India, but because of someone's letter, it has reformed the Indian prison service significantly, and the benefits are there. Kenya is copying the same thing, and other places. It's even done in the US. So it's something that we can look at. The second thing I would like the CJ to look at is this issue of contempt of court. You know, in democracy, the only thing that keeps democracy going is what we say. You know, it's what we say. So if we are not expressing ourselves, then it means that we have to find other ways of, through words, and we have to find other ways of expressing ourselves, and democracy may suffer. Now, I am not in any way suggesting that people should be allowed to say whatever they want to say. No, there should be a limit on what people say. But whatever limit it is that we want to put on speech should be clearly stated, so we know ahead of time. You know, the nature of contempt and the way we handle it here is that you don't know what will be contemptuous of a court and what will land you behind bars. And that is dangerous for democracy. I hear people say that you cannot comment on a case which is before a court unless or until the case has been decided, which is, I wonder where that principle comes from. But it's something that is applied even in the court. Who says that a public interest issue is there, and just because one person took it to court, the whole country has to keep quiet and wait for the judge to decide? So we need to, if her leadership would be remembered for something, I think one of the things that should be remembered for, if she's able to structure this contempt, so we know ahead of time that when you do, it is impossible to list all the things that people could do that will be contemptuous, but we can always create a framework. So we need that predictability. So we should clarify the law on contempt, and we should distinguish between contempt which happens in front of the court, and if someone is somewhere making his comment, how can that become, you know? So in most jurisdictions, contempt in the sense of things that you say outside the court don't amount to contempt anymore. If you come to court and you misbehave, that is before the court, the matter could be handled. But if I'm somewhere and I'm saying expressing myself, and because it is not, it is threatening or
freedom of speech is constitutional.
You know, so we need to look at it critically.
Okay, I'll come back to you for your last one. I hear Adams is back on the line. He needs clarifications to something. I don't know what exactly, but Adams.
Hello.
Adams, I hear you need some clarifications. On what exactly?
Yes, the clarification is on employers who exploit. Yes, it's about employers who exploit their employees, especially in the informal sector. There's a certain intellectual, deliberate tactics that they apply to exploit these employees, and they have no access to justice. And their independence, their economic life is being stifled upon, leaving them in the doldrum without any hope in seeing life. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how related
Rebecca, I'm surprised. I mean,
I'll give you the
I'm
so
surprised at the suggestion that such people don't have access to justice, because the Labour Commission is available to such people to lodge complaints. That's not a formal court system, so it's easier for lay persons to go to the Labour Commission and lodge complaints about employers whom they feel are not dealing fairly with them. So that's an avenue for them. And the legal aid system is still in existence. It might not be functioning as well as expected, but the legal aid office is there. And I think that people are still accessing justice through the legal assistance through the legal aid. I mean, if there are indigents, the legal aid avails them an opportunity to have lawyers assisting them with their matters. I mean, the legal aid and how it's funded and all of it's a whole new topic for discussion on its own. It must be well resourced. Probably that's one area that the new CJ would want to take a look at, ensuring that everybody has access to justice regardless of your financial circumstances. The legal aid system is dying in this country. I mean, there are very few lawyers who are even interested in working in the legal aid outfit. And I mean, so it's one area that we need to look at in the immediate and try and find some solutions to. But the Labour Commission is always available. You don't really need legal representation at the legal
and the Labour unions. The Labour unions these are some of the things that they should be helping their members to achieve. Yeah. You know, you are a union because you want to fight for the interests of your people. Exactly. So if your members are being abused and you are sitting down there and taking dues, and you are not taking steps.
Yeah, because it's a constitutional right. Yeah, your employers cannot prevent you from unionizing. So what happens to that? I mean, so there are avenues. There are avenues. Unless these recognized institutions and systems are failing them, these are avenues that you can make use of.
Yeah, Justice, let me have your final one on the expectations or what you want the CJ to be remembered for. You had 3 of them.
Yeah, so I mentioned the public interest litigation. I talked about the contempt. And the last one is the ADR aspect. Yes. And I am particularly glad because she was the chairperson of the ADR task force.
So before you go ahead, somebody here says, this one is for Prince Aqua in Kaswa. Prince says, I'm really enjoying the discussion. Kindly go ahead and explain the contempt bit very well before you move to your next your next suggestion, Justice. I think is right for you.
Well, I mean, what I was trying to say is this. We contempt means that you have done something which is obstructing the administration of justice or is affecting the court prevent the court from delivering justice in the way that they ought to. It may be from physically doing something in front of the court or outside the court. Court has given orders and you have disobeyed the order, or it may be that you have said something, as we have come to know. You have said something elsewhere which is interpreted to mean an attack on the court and to bring the image of the court into disrepute. But the issue I'm trying to put across is, in a democracy, if you want to progress, you have to encourage free speech. The people must explain themselves and say what they want to say, especially about public officials, including judges and other elected officers. Because it's the taxpayers' money and the taxpayers...
In a guarded manner.
Yeah, definitely in a guarded manner. Now the question is, we often come up with issues and then there are discussions as to whether it's contemptuous or not and all that. We need to narrow what contempt is. We need to specify what amount to contempt so that we don't speak and then after thinking that we are exercising our right to freedom of speech, then we are now suffering some consequences because we didn't know ahead of time what would have happened. So I am not in any way suggesting that we should list all the possible activities or behaviors that may constitute contempt, but we should create a scope which is more specific than we have now. Now it appears the judge, the judge may cite you for contempt, and it will be the judge in the matter, it will be the prosecutor, it will be everything. And in such a situation, it's hard for you or anyone to say that you are going to defend yourself successfully unless you want to beg. And if this continues, it won't be the best for our democracy. So it's something that we could actually look at, and I believe the Chief Justice in her administrative capacity could put notices and directives in place to ensure that we do not find ourselves in some of the things that we've been witnessing in the recent past.
Okay,
if I can just, I mean,
yes,
I think that
you add your final bits, then we.
I think that to a large extent, a lot of, well, maybe you were talking specifically about lay persons, but to a large extent, a lot of people are conscious of the things that are contemptuous of the court, you know, of acts and comments which amount to contempt, because you have, I believe that you are free to comment on the work of the court. You see, it is when you make comments which are derogatory or disparaging about the personalities. You know, sometimes we descend to a certain level, and I think that this matter has come to prominence a lot because of the Montie 3 issue. And for me, the one thing that stood out was the procedure adopted in dealing with contempt in that nature. I think that is where I would want to see some specificity. And so because you're talking about contempt which is quasi-criminal, that's what makes it serious. It's not just a civil act. It's quasi-criminal, and it leads you to jail, as we saw. So, I mean, in that regard, there must be some clarity on the procedure adopted. And in where you have an instance where the judges cite you for the contempt and are judges in their own course and all of that, that's where, for me, I had issues. But to a large extent, I think that in our rules books and the rest, we have some indication as to what amounts to.
Eva, I think the point was
so I guess we should be wrapping up. I hear my time
let me just make this quick one.
Let me just
make this quick one. You know, the thing we call contempt, you and I may be very aware of some of the things that you may say, but I don't think that speaking against the person of someone is a criminal offense and should not. So
the lawyers will continue with that debate.
Someone should not go to
Let me give Abigail the chance. Abigail, your final. They will go discussing this.
Yes,
Abigail.
After we are done. Okay, my expectations from the incoming CJ is one, adding gender to the curriculum or syllabus of legal practitioners, like those who are doing LLB, BL and all that. Gender should be part of it and it should be examinable. Two, I would want her to increase the DV courts that we have, if possible, to every region and every district capital. And then, yes, and then three, I did realize that when you go to some of the circuit and magistrate courts, they are not fit to be courts, you know. So if they can upgrade the circuit courts and then the magistrate courts, that would be really amazing.
Good.
And then mainstreaming gender.
Hey, gender advocates. Okay.
Well, it's very important. It's very important.
I know.
Gender issues are very important. And
well, I mean,
you lose a lot of resources and money. I mean, resources because of gender discrimination, which shouldn't be the case.
Well, I mean, you spoke a lot about domestic violence and all of that. I mean, thankfully, I had the opportunity to look at the decisions of Justice Sophia AKUFFO, and from her decisions, you can tell that she's a human rights advocate. She believes in human rights. She puts a human face to the law. She's liberal-minded in her approach to the law. And so I think that there should be no fears as to how she will ensure that justice is delivered so that the marginalized in our society have justice and have it in the best of ways.
Okay, so that will be it for this particular segment. We've been looking at the appointment of the new CJ in the person of Madam Sophia AKUFFO and the expectations. And I have been in here with, I call her the excellent Eva Okyere. She has a dual profession. She's now into law and she is a journalist as well. And the Harvard trained, I call him.
You know, I was a lawyer before going to Harvard, you know. So,
okay, so he's into private practice as well. He is a lawyer, and he is in the person of Justice Srem Sai, and he is a lecturer in human rights and commercial law, constitutional law, and all the laws, international law at the Ghana Institute of Management and Administration, Gimpa. And I also had in here Abigail Hunu, who is a human rights advocate. She is a women's advocate as such, and she has a legal background and with the Women in Law and Development in Africa, Wildaf Ghana. Thank you very much for passing through. I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Good, good. So that will be it. We'll come back and we'll be talking about leadership and attaining higher heights in education. You don't want to miss this person I'm bringing on board. Please stay glued. Don't go anywhere.
Presenters Fabric for the Reporters Roundtable is sponsored by ATL, ATL.com.
All right, well, welcome back to the Reporters Roundtable, and we've been talking about the appointment of the CJ and our expectations of her. And in this segment, so I promised you from the start of the show that today I will present to you somebody special, and one fine woman with a focus on leadership and management of higher education. She actually proposed and facilitated the establishment of the Otumfuo Centre for Traditional Leadership and the Drolor Centre for Strategic Leadership, two leadership centers of excellence in Ghana. She is an academic practitioner and an accomplished entrepreneur with more than 15 years of experience in academia, consultancy, and regulations. My viewers, I know you're looking forward to this very woman. She is no other person than Professor Goski Alabi. She is my guest on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the program.
Happy to be here.
Good. So let's talk about education. What's your assessment of Ghana's educational system in general as an educationist?
Well, I think that generally Ghana's education is good. It's good because it has produced people like you and I. So obviously there is a lot to be happy about when we think about Ghana's education. When we think about the fact that as a people, as a country, we are at the helm of our own affairs. When we think about the fact that when Ghanaians go out there, they excel. We've had numerous examples of people who studied here, say first degree or even masters, and they went out there and outshone their colleagues. So definitely there is something good about Ghana's education. But when we look at it from the other side, the questions we've got to be asking ourselves is that, is it supporting and promoting development the way we expect it to be in the country?
Okay.
So, I mean, the question is for us to answer as a people.
And is it, in your perspective?
Well, I believe that we can do better. I mean, when we look at the fact that we compare ourselves to other people, to other countries, to other economies, and we feel that we are not there yet. We've just become a lower middle income country. And as to whether we are able to sustain that status is another thing. When we look at the quality of life of Ghanaians, when we look at gross enrollment ratios, right from the basic level to the secondary level, to the tertiary level, are we happy with it? Do we have enough people having tertiary education as we would want it to be? Because ultimately, that should be the goal. If we look at our life expectancy, is it something that we're very happy with? If we look at our environment, infrastructural development, is it something that we're happy with? if we look at how much, I keep saying, that we spend on malaria, for example, and we have scientists in this country, and we still have that reactive approach to managing malaria and still keep spending so much on it, yet we have not even thought about the aspects of malaria which we cannot quantify that easily, like how it affects productivity, for example. And we still have scientists, professors, PhDs in biological sciences, in chemistry. You ask yourself, where did we get it wrong? I mean, so I just wouldn't want to look at it as a Ghanaian problem, but it is also an African challenge. When Ebola raised its ugly head in Africa, we were waiting for other scientists to bring us the solutions. Is it possible that we could be proactive in using the knowledge that we have, in creating solutions for our country and for our people? And when I talk about malaria, why haven't we gotten a vaccine for malaria, you know, developed in Ghana by now? Yet, I mean, I had my master's in food science, MPhil, from the University of Ghana. I had my BSc in chemistry from the University of Cape Coast. And I had colleagues who did biology, who did, how do you call it, entomology, who did chemistry, who did biochemistry. I have colleagues who are professors today. There are 4 professors in the sciences. Where did we go wrong with the knowledge that we have?
Is it that I don't know, there's this gap where because you talk about not producing medicines for malaria and all of that.
It's just an example.
Okay, so you have the certificates and all of that, but are you saying we are not really getting the benefit of the certificate? Is that what you want to tell us?
We could do better. There is always room for improvement. When it comes to quality, it's an unending journey. It is not a goal that you reach. It is a process, and it is a process of unending improvement. So from a quality point of view, I would say that there is still a lot of room for improvement when it comes to using the knowledge we have to promote the quality of life of Ghanaians.
Good. I would want us to come back to the issue of higher education, and we'll touch more on the fact that our schools are not churning out graduates that are qualified for industry. Yes, because once you've brought it up, we have to touch on it quickly. But we'll go for a quick break and we'll come back.
Presenters Fabric for the Reporters Roundtable is sponsored by ATL. ATL, bringing fabrics to life. More information is online at www.akosombo-textiles.com.
Right, so I'm so in here with Professor Goski Alabi. We're talking about leadership and management of higher education, and she's giving us quite an information. Let's come back to higher education and the fact that our schools are not churning out graduates that fits for industry. With all that you said before we went on the break, there's room for improvement, but what particularly, what recommendations would you make?
Well, I think that we need to move away from the overly theoretical approach to tertiary education and higher education to a more experiential-based, instructional approaches. And when I talk about that, it's not just how we teach, but it's also about the kind of experiences that we bring to bear in the teaching and learning process, and the fact that the way we assess, you know, the way we assess, because for now, our assessment strategies are such that everything is tied to rote learning. True, poor, pass, get a certificate, forget. You know, if we can change that, if we as a country can really interrogate the whole educational process and have a more strategic approach to it, because as it is now, it appears that policies are quite ad hoc. Today, you find one system and tomorrow it is changed. When one, for example, it appears that the educational policies, the kind of swing with, you know, the changes in political, you know, situations or the political governance, let me put it that way. When we have a new political party, we have a new educational system. For example, we're already thinking and talking about 4 years to 3 years, 3 years to 4 or 5 years again. I mean, this is ad hoc. And we cannot manage education strategically like that. We need to be very, very cautious of exactly what we want our higher education or the entire education to produce for us as a people. As we speak today, Ghana still does not have a qualifications framework. A qualifications framework simply helps you to kind of map one level to the other level for efficient transition from one level to the other, and also to allow for linkages between different disciplines and levels. For example, the TVET system. As a people, we frown on the TVET system. That is the technical and vocational system. But that is where we have the skills that can turn our economy around, and yet we look down upon it. If you have a sibling or a child that has to go through the TVET system, the assumption is that that child is not good enough. And therefore, everybody wants to go to a traditional university or a secondary school and then end there. You'd see that the TVET system is not very well developed. And why is that? Because before, it appeared that when you went through the TVET system, your academic career is truncated. The best you could do is to go to the polytechnic. Okay, beyond the polytechnic, it becomes difficult to even progress. And even where there were opportunities for people within the TVET system to progress by using their higher national diplomas to continue, you know, to higher levels of education, we come up with a policy like, when you finish your HND, you need to work for 2 or 3 years before you can progress. You know, when it was another route for people to find their own meaning, you know, in higher education. So you ask yourself, what was the basis of a policy like that? You know, well, the argument could be because we want these people to go gain some experience before they come into the traditional system. But when they get into the traditional system, what happens? I get in my point of view. So you realize that we need to have a more comprehensive and holistic approach to our education, because the development of the country, it's tied quite directly to the education of the people. If the people are well educated and they have the necessary skills and competences as well as the attitudes, which is critical, then we would be able to benefit more from the education or the educational system that we have. Why do I tie this to a national qualifications framework? Because if there is a national qualifications framework, I really do not, it doesn't really matter whether one went through the TVET system or one went through a traditional system, because you have a framework that tells you that this qualification is at this level, and from there you can actually come to this other level, and it links all the qualifications to the highest level. Okay, but we don't have that kind of system, you know, in Ghana. In fact, we don't have the qualifications framework.
It's about high time we take a look at that.
It's about high time we take a look at that. Indeed, there has been some framework which has been developed at the court vet level, and that is essentially to cater for the technical and vocational system. But I keep saying that that is as good as nothing, because that qualifications framework itself, it is to feed into a bigger national qualifications framework. And where that is not available, then of course you have a qualifications framework that takes you where?
So in all of this that you have said, you know the question that comes to mind: how do you become a better leader when there are key challenges to your foundation, the educational system in general? How? Because all of this is tied in, leadership is in every sphere is tied in somehow to your education. Not necessarily though, but majority.
You see, leadership is not just about the knowledge you have.
Yeah, sure.
Leadership is about what you do. Leadership is an action-based process. Leadership is about knowing what you want and going for that thing regardless of the challenges that you face. Anytime we talk about leadership, I think there is the assumption that leadership is all about the leader. And so anytime we say there are challenges, there are problems, we're looking at our leaders and we are saying we have a leadership crisis, we have a leadership problem, when in actual fact we may be talking about we having a leaders crisis and not a leadership crisis.
Explain that further.
Good. Because leadership is not what leaders alone do. Leadership is what leaders and members do together in a given context. So if Ghana is the way it is not just the government, it is the people. It is the attitudes of the people. It is the way we use the knowledge we have to get the things that we want for ourselves. It is a collective, you know, activity that results in a certain outcome. So indeed we have a leadership crisis, because when you read one of the most instructive reports that we have in Ghana on education, I mean, if you want to have almost all the information you need about education, then you're looking at the Education Sector Performance Report, the ESPR. And I'd like to commend the Ministry of Education because they're doing a tremendous job with that. I mean, great job. The reports come out very timely. And when you go into it, it gives you the performance of basic to tertiary education, as well as non-formal, informal education as well. Now, when you look at that report, it is saying, so not me, I'm not saying, it says that much of the challenge we have has to do with unproductive work attitudes.
So attitude.
So it is more an attitudinal problem than it is of the knowledge we possess. We have so much knowledge, but it's how we use that knowledge and what exactly we do with that knowledge, which is the critical issue. Okay, so when we talk about graduate unemployment, for example, it is not so much an issue of the skills and competencies, but it is more an issue of the attitudes that some of the graduates have when they get onto the job market, when they get into the world of work. So the question exactly is, how do we manage some of these things so that in the end we have leadership? Because leadership is about attitude. It's attitude, attitude, and attitude again.
Is that what really led you in facilitating and actually proposing the establishment of 2 leadership centers?
Well, yes, to a large extent. And there again, I talk about how we use the knowledge. For the first one, the Otumfuo Centre for Traditional Leadership, I happen to have led a research project, a 100,000 research project, which was funded by DFID under the AAU. And we researched into how traditional leaders in the Western region were kind of using the resources they have, you know, to enhance the development of their region once oil was found in that region. And what did we find? When we got to the ground, we found that the reality is that much of the land, because we have a stool land system, is actually controlled, in quotes, by the traditional leaders. Because they are the people giving out the land for people to use. Are you getting the point? So how the land, which is the biggest resource we have, is being used was something to do with what the traditional leaders did. What did we find? In most of the communities, there were no land maps. People were using geographical, you know, signs like rivers, like anthills, like trees to demarcate the lands that they have. So you could imagine. It brings about conflicts. There were no, some of the chiefs and the kings did not have let's say registries that had documents that can provide evidence of what decisions they had taken in the past with respect to how land had been allocated or used or who it had been sold to.
Okay.
So again, conflict.
I'm told my time is getting...
Okay.
So because of the time, let's fast forward it. And
what happened was that
objective of the 2
with
centers.
all of this, we realized that there was the need to provide some kind of training for the traditional leaders. In particular, training in leadership, because then we could see how best we can enhance the already capable traditional skills in terms of leadership of our traditional leaders, because these people are resolving conflicts in their own way, and sometimes it's even more effective than going to wait in the courts. So how do we really enhance those kind of leadership skills? That led to the proposal to develop the Traditional Leadership Center, which Otumfuo bought into. And I'm very happy that today we have several of our traditional leaders in Ghana coming through the Otumfuo Centre for Traditional Leadership. So this is an example of how a research that was quite unrelated could produce results that can be used directly to enhance quality of life of the people. Okay, the Strategic Leadership Center is also similar, because we felt that if we as a country lead strategically, then we wouldn't have questions of why we should have done so today. Because if we were strategic enough as a country in terms of leadership, we would have known that by the time that Nkrumah built Akosombo Dam and had plans for Bui, and we looked at the population, our economists and the national development planners would have gotten up to do their projections and would know that by the time we hit this time, there would have been so many people with so many industries, with so much need for energy, and therefore our energy needs would be like that. Which means that as a country, we needed to prioritize energy needs. But we have not managed our energy needs strategically. And that shows that our leadership has not been strategic. And therefore, there is need for us to start thinking about how we can lead more strategically as a country.
I'd love to have you back on the program again. But you know, how do you juggle between being an academic, a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur, a lifestyle coach, and how do you do that? You must be a superwoman. Yes, you are a superwoman anyway.
Yes, but the other thing
Are you a
I like
reverend
to say
as well?
Yes, I preach as well.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is that I think it's about people and trust. Because if you have people who understand and support you, particularly a family that understands and supports you, then you can have, you know, the freedom to do some of these things. And when you have friends and family and colleagues at work in particular, who you have very good relationships with and who you can trust, who you can delegate some of the things to, and believe that when you sleep and wake up, they are there to cover your back.
And you can do all
Then you can do all these things. So I think it's more about quality of relationships, family first, and then the next is friends, colleagues, the people you surround yourself with, to a very large extent.
Okay. Let me give you a second to talk about the assertion that women in your tribesmen, let me say particularly Ghana women, would always, there's this assertion that they don't want to pursue what I call it, education to the highest level, but you are an exception. So what would you tell? Is that true in the first place?
There are
what would
many
you tell?
of my kind in Accra. I'm a Ghana woman. I'm a proud Ghana woman from Nungwa. And you know, I would like to say that the Ghana women are very industrious. They are very, very hardworking. And it's always important to understand your strengths and weaknesses. It's not all of us that have to become PhDs or professors and all of that. What is important is that we have a certain level of education, and being educated is not just about the formal education, but it's also about the knowledge you have and how you use that knowledge to promote your well-being and the well-being of the people around you. And I tell you, when it comes to that, the Ghana women, we are on top of our game.
Two for Ghana women.
Two for us.
All right, so I apologize. Really, I can see messages coming in. Yes. And let me apologize to my viewers that because of the time we can't pay calls and we can read your messages. But I promise you, I wish this conversation wouldn't end. I promise you. And Professor Goski, do you promise my viewers to come back on this set?
I promise. I
promise.
Good.
So we have a deal. So we'll bring Professor Goski Alabi back, and we have been talking about leadership and management of higher education. And maybe the next time she comes on the set, I would want to tout her achievements more, so that you know that she's a woman of weight, actually. So Professor Goski Alabi has been a guest on the chat, on the Reporters Roundtable. She's an academic, a practitioner, and an accomplished entrepreneur with more than 15 years of experience in academia. She's we'll do that on our next sitting. So my name is Rebecca Ewa, and thank you, Prof.
I'd like to encourage all women to educate themselves to the highest level possible, because that gives us true social independence and economic independence as well. I want to say that if you're a woman and you earn or make an income, make sure you help another woman, whether a child or a household or anything. Make sure you help another woman to attain a higher qualification. And as for us, the Ghana women, it's a completely different dimension. We are going to take it to a new level.
Any memory verse you have in mind as a preacher? Tell us one memory verse before we go.
One memory verse.
Yes.
Okay.
That comes readily.
I would like Psalm 34.
Okay.
And in Psalm 34, it is say that I would like us to read the whole of Psalm 34 because it's very instructive. But the verses, I think 7 and 8 or so, would say that, who is he that loves to see many days? And in all those days loves to see good. That person must keep the mouth from speaking evil and must seek and pursue peace all the time. So let's continue to seek and pursue peace, and let's try to keep our mouths from speaking evil.
Good. That has been it. A show produced by Mark Sesu, Phyllis Kofi, Celestina V, Daniel Samoji as my director, and I have a whole technical crew back in this. I wish you could see all the people behind the camera, the lighting, and everybody. Thank you, Ghana, for also tuning in. Okay, so we'll see you next week. Bye.